Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. This is Samantha Varner here from ProSymmetry, Customer Success Manager. So excited that we are bringing 7.0 to you all today. Matt Baker from our support team will be running today's webinar, and we're going to give it just about another minute or so here for more people to attend. But like I said, we are today showing you a preview of version 7.0. In this version, we have a few things that we're introducing, like task management. We made some enhancements and put some more functionality into our roadmap management area, which was introduced in 6.2. We also made some enhancements to the UI for project scheduling, in addition to many, many other things. As you all know, we like to jam these version releases with as much as we can. With that said, I wanted to make the note that the release notes are available for download in the handout section of the webinar. So feel free to check those out there. And finally, any questions that you have, feel free to send them. If there's something that we can get to by the end of the webinar, we will. If not, I will be answering things as they come in and or following up after the webinar as well. This session will be recorded and you will receive a link to the video in a follow-up email. Additionally, the recording will be posted to our YouTube in the Help Center in a couple days from now. So you can expect that to be available in a few days. And then finally, Matt, let's go ahead and get started.
Perfect. Thank you, Samantha, and hello, everybody. I'm Matthew Baker from ProSymmetry, and I'll be conducting today's webinar going over the new functionality within version 7.0. Today, we'll be going through a PowerPoint, going through a high-level overview of some of the functionalities, and then we'll be jumping between a live demonstration of some of that new functionality as well. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it. And before we get into the new functionality, I do just have some action items and some just some things I wanted to say beforehand. So with the new version 7.0 coming out, I just want to let everyone aware that 7.0 will be available to those with premium support first. So that will be the prioritization when it comes to upgrading. The upgrades will not be automatic. So you will have to reach out to your customer success manager to kind of schedule that upgrade and get that process going. So Samantha Varner, who was talking earlier, will be your customer success manager, and feel free to reach out to her after when 7.0 does become available, and she can go ahead and get that process. Additionally, there is no additional cost to upgrading, so you just have to reach out and make sure that gets scheduled, as well as the release notes, the webinar deck, as well as the recording of the webinar will be available within the Tempus Help Center tomorrow. Lastly, if you have any questions on new functionality or any functionality within Tempus, you can feel free to visit our support center at support.tempusresource.com to review any of the help documentation that we have available. With that being said, we're going to go start off with some of the new functionality, and the first area that we're going to focus on is task management. So within version 7.0, we did add a new tile within the administrative or admin settings area called task management. What this is going to be used for is it's going to allow you to customly define your tasks beforehand and then associate them to projects. So this is governed by the manage permissions project role within your role management. So administrative would be mostly an administrative action within there. So when you navigate to the task management tile, you'll be prompted to create a list of tasks that will then can be associated to a particular type of projects. So within here, you'll be able to determine the tasks that you want to associate to your projects, determine the ordering and the names of those, and then as well, determine what type of projects these should be associated to. The different types of projects they can be associated to will be based off of two things. One, you'll have your kind of out-of-the-box regular projects. So think of that, if you hit the create project, that's going to be assumed to be a regular project, and those tasks will be automatically created with for those, as well as any of your workflow projects. So a couple releases ago, we introduced the concept of the project workflow, which allowed you to create forms and have a project go through a workflow process. If you are utilizing that functionality, you will then be able to determine from this list, you'll be able to see that type workflow type of project, as well as associate those tasks to that workflow project. So when you're creating a list, you'll be able to manage any of the tasks within there. You'll see options for the tasks that you have created, as well as you'll be able to determine the ordering, as well as delete and manage those on an ongoing basis. And then lastly, on the project creation side of things, once you've had that set up, you really shouldn't have to worry too much about getting those tasks within your system. It's going to be revolved around that creation of the project. So if you're creating a regular project, you will automatically see those tasks populated based off of what you've defined. And then if you're working with a particular workflow type of project, when you select on that, when you're creating a project, you'll see those tasks automatically populate as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump out real fast and head to my Tempus environment that's on 7.0, and we'll walk through kind of what that task management process will look like. So from the Tempus homepage, if we head here to admin settings, we will now see this kind of dark purple task management tile, where if we select on it, you'll be able to see kind of the predefined list of tasks that you have created. So you will be able to have multiple defined lists of tasks. However, each type of project will only be able to have one task list associated to it. So if I tried to create another task list and I wanted to assign regular projects to it, since my operation project type already has is already associated to regular projects, the system would not allow you to do so. So to create a new list is as simple as clicking on Create New List, defining the name of that list, and I'll just name this task list, for example. And then down below, you can determine what tasks that you would like to have assigned to your projects. So I can see task 1, task 2, task 4, and task 3. And then from here, if you need to change the ordering, let's say, for example, I need to move task 4 below, you can use the icon here on the left to determine what the ordering of those tasks should look like. And then lastly, when you're setting this up, you'll just have to associate it to a particular type of project. So right now at the top, we see my regular projects, which would just be that create project option, as well as you'll have a list of any of the workflow projects that may be created within here. So if I wanted to assign it to my intake form right here, I can go ahead and associate that to there, as well as you can associate to many types of projects. So it is reusable in that sense as well. And I can do my date workflow. So I want it to be associated to my intake Sean type of workflow project, as well as my date workflow type of project. And then I can go ahead and hit save to keep that particular information in here. So at any point in time, you can go back in here and update and manage the tasks that are associated to it. But it is important to note that that's not going to retroactively update your projects that may have already been created with the prior lists within there. So if I were to delete some of these tasks moving forward, when I would create new projects, I should see it reflective of the tasks that have been defined within here. However, my existing projects that were already created would still have the task listings based off of the original values provided. It's set up this way to make sure we're protecting the integrity of the data and making sure that assignments that are currently on those projects are not being disrupted through this process. So right here, I have my operation project and it's associated to my regular projects, and I have assigned development staff, identity go-to partners, create communication plans, conduct training usability study, as well as post-implementation review and complete. So if I were to go back to the Tempus homepage, and then from here, go to project management. If I create a project and I create a regular project, it's gonna look very similar to what you've seen before, where you're on the allocations or attributes page. Now I'll just name this operations project. And now if I set a start and end date, we should see all of those tasks already pre-populated. And then from there, we can go ahead and create that. And so that would work along the lines for any of the projects that are created in this fashion. Perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go back to my slide deck. And the next area that we're gonna be covering is some of the new functionality within the project management area within Tempus. So the first new piece of functionality on the project side of things is going to be project dependencies. So within Tempus now, you will be able to determine dependencies between your projects at a project level. So within each project, there'll be a new area called dependencies, where you can determine the successor within there, as well as the predecessors will be automatically assigned based off the successors that have been defined on those projects. So you'll be able to see that and review what those look like, as well as something that we'll cover later on will be how those dependencies will be impacted and displayed within the roadmap area within Tempus. So when you navigate to a project, you'll see that dependencies area, and you'll be able to add those successors and then have those predecessors automatically defined. So this is going to be governed by a new permission within Tempus under the role management project rules, and it will be able to either grant users view or edit capabilities to project dependencies. Additionally, we've added a new forecast financial data set within project financials. This is going to act very similar to the planned, actual, and budget data sets that currently exist. However, it's going to be an additional data set governed by a separate permission. We've seen many clients that when utilizing the financial area, they need to break down that information and really determine the security permissions and the security model around some of that information being displayed. So this is just another data set where you can hold and display this information and lock that down even further than some of the other particular data sets. It's important to note if you are including your labor cost information within here, that labor cost information will be based off your planned allocation information within the system and not based off of the actual. Next, a quick update based off of feedback that we heard from some clients is just a minor update to how you can edit the task names within Tempus. So in previous versions of Tempus, you did not have the capability to rename tasks based off of capitalization. So for instance, if you had, in this case, task 1 with a lowercase t, and you wanted to update that to task 1 with an uppercase t, the system would not recognize that as a valid change, would not let you move forward with that. So we did make an update so you can go ahead and do something along those lines. Okay. Additionally, we have also allowed some of the additional columns that are being added in SPA to be rearranged by dragging and dropping. So a couple versions ago, we did add the capability to have and add in your custom project resource and assignment attributes within the single project allocation view. Very nice functionality and very useful to get that visibility on the project and resources that are assigned. But one of the pieces of feedback we kept hearing was along the lines of, well, it's great to be able to add those, but we'd like to be able to control the ordering. So this will accommodate for just that. So whenever you add those additional columns within the view, you can now click on the column header, in this case, assignment country, and just click on it and drag it into the positioning that you would like for it to be in. So it is important to note that that's only going to work with the custom attributes that you add within the grid. So your project resource and assignment attributes. Any of the data attributes based off the time frame of the project will be kind of statically placed, so you will not be able to rearrange any of those. And then lastly, on the project management side of things, we have augmented the logic that is associated to the deletion of an assignment. So in the past, when deleting an assignment, we required that the user have access to both the planned as well as actual side of things to make sure that they had full visibility to delete that information within there and not impact data sets that they do not have access to. However, we have changed that slightly. So now the system's going to try to recognize if that particular assignment currently has access to those data sets, or if allocation is assigned to the assignment. And if it's not, and the user does not have access to that particular data set, they'll still be able to go forward with that deletion. So for example, let's say we had a user that had access to edit the planned allocation within Tempus, as well as they only had view access to the actual allocation within 7.0. If planned allocation is assigned to that to an assignment, but there is no actual allocation, that user should still be able to delete that assignment. In previous iterations, since they had that view actual allocation permission and it was not edit, if they were to go through with that similar process, even if the assignment did not have actual allocation, they would be prohibited from deleting that assignment. So a very minor update to the logic, but a very beneficial one. Okay, so with that being said, the next area we'll be covering today will be project schedule. However, before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my Tempus environment and cover some of the different pieces of functionality that we just added. So to start things off, I'm going to head to project management over here, and I'm going to go ahead and open up a project. So now when you navigate to this attributes page, you will have this new dependency option within Tempus. So I'm going to jump around a little bit, but I just want to make sure we cover where that permission is governed. So on the admin settings side of things, if we head to role management and to project role, we should now see a new option within here called access project dependencies. So this is going to be the permission that allows users to either view, edit, or have no access to your project dependencies within Tempus. So when we are navigating back to the project, when you are within here, you'll see this dependencies option right here, and then you can determine what this will be the successor for. So let's say, for example, I navigate and I say, I have my Zulu phase 11, and then I want to say this is a successor to Apollo phase 14. We can go here now, and if I open up Apollo phase 14, right here, I will also have options on this attribute to see that it's the predecessor to Zulu phase 11. So this will be very useful, and we'll see a little bit more in the demonstration here in a bit when we cover the roadmap functionality updates, where you can kind of see where that kind of comes into play and how you can visualize this information. Additionally, if we navigate to the ellipses up here in the top right, and we go to financials, we'll see that new data set that has also been added. So I'll check out this project. And now you'll see we have planned, actual, as well as the forecast option, which is the new data set that is available within Tempus. So it's going to act very similarly to some of the other financial data sets that we've seen within Tempus. Just like you would normally do, you can determine your, you can determine the financial categories you wish to assign. And then from here, you can add those into the grid and determine what that forecasted budget would be. And then, like I mentioned earlier, this include labor costs will more so be based off of the allocation side of things or the planned side of things, not the actual. So when you're looking at this information for your data, for your labor costs, that will be based off of the planned side, not the actual. Okay, and one more thing I want to mention on that is I want to cover that permission that will be governing this, and it's very similar to the other permissions that we've seen on the financial side of things. But if we navigate to role management and head to project roles, and if I scroll over just a little bit, we'll see that access forecast financials. So you'll see you have similar permissions for your actual financials, planned, as well as budget line, but this will be the new permissioning governing that financial forecast data set. Okay, if I navigate back to the home page and go to my project management once more, we can open up a project and go through what it looks like to create and update the name of a task within Tempus. But previously we saw something along the lines where we would not be able to satisfy if we wanted to change the name that is exactly the same with just different capitalization. Now, if we wanted to rename this create communications plan and just go ahead and put capitalization and have that camel case, we can go ahead and make that update and it should be perfectly fine. Additionally, when we're in the project, like I was saying earlier, you do have the capability to add any of your attributes in here. So let's add some of my assignment attributes, as well as we'll scroll down here and add my certifications department, as well as email within here. And now if you wish to reorder the positioning of any of these, you can easily do so by just selecting on the column itself, on the column header, and you'll see this little hand icon as your cursor, and you can just drag and drop it into the place you want. So let's say we wanted to add it there. I'll go to project mode. And let's say I wanted my department to be in the second position. We can go ahead and just change the positioning within here, and this will persist within the view. So any of the attributes that you do add within this view should persist when navigating to other projects in the same fashion, as well as that positioning will also persist within the view as well. So you won't have to continuously reorder and restructure what this looks like. You can put it in place, and as long as you're not constantly changing it, it will have the same display each time you open up a project. Okay, and the last option I wanted to cover is the deletion option. So I did set up a separate account, so bear with me while I go ahead and navigate to that. And this has just been a separate resource that has been set up where this user has access to edit the planned allocation within Tempus, but does not have access to update the actual allocation within Tempus. So if I navigate to project management, I'm just going to go ahead and open up this vendor phase 2 project and navigate to the allocations tab. From here, we can see a multitude of different assignments that I've set up, as well as we can see we have right here, Bruce Wayne, or Bruce Warren has some actual allocation assigned here, as well as he has assignments that just have planned. So if I check out this assignment, you can see if I go to navigate down, we have the option to update the planned, but not the actual. If I were to try to delete, you will see that it deleted that information, and since it was the resource level, deleted that. Let's see if I have a better assignment to work with. Let me go back real fast. And I apologize. So within this case, when you're working with the deletion option, you will be able to delete just the planned if you have the access to edit the planned and have the actuals not be impacted. So you'll still be able to clear out that information. And if you're working with just an assignment that just has planned, in this case, let's work with Alex, you'll have full capabilities to actually remove this, where in previous versions, you did not. So I'm gonna go ahead and save and check in. And I'm gonna head back to my slide deck. And the next topics we'll be covering today will be on the project scheduling side of things. So project schedule was something we've added a couple years ago, and we've gone through and updated the user interface and the look and feel of what that currently looks like. So you'll see it does look somewhat similar. However, it should be a little bit more flexible and provide a little bit cleaner than it previously was being displayed, as well as we updated a few things here and there on how you can view this information at the weekly, monthly, and daily level. Instead of having the magnifying glass, it's going to be more so determining and displaying what is currently the view that is currently being displayed, as well as we've made it a little bit more apparent on the choose column side of things instead of it being a little bit more hidden. Additionally, one of the big major things that have been added within the scheduling area will be the concept of project schedule notes. So each particular task that you have defined within schedule will also have the capability to add notes within there. So the notes is going to associate the user as well as a timestamp, as well as the comment that you provide, and it'll allow for some of that more so real-time communication between users on those particular tasks that you have created to see if that looks and kind of have that collaboration determine if everything is looking fine in that schedule and if any updates need to be made. So I'm going to head back to Tempus real fast. And from here, I'm just going to go ahead and navigate to my project management. And I'm just going to navigate to my schedule test view and open up this schedule test demo. From here, I'm going to select on the ellipses in the top right, And I'm going to navigate down to schedule, where we can see what that new schedule format will look like. So I've set up a just very brief rough schedule with some names of tasks, durations, and some dependencies. If I go ahead and check out that schedule, just like you've seen with the previous iteration, you can add new tasks down below like you normally would. You can work with either the duration over here or directly within the grid to kind of determine what that looks like, as well as the start and end date of the given task. I'll move that over. You can click and drag to make your dependencies, or you can always use this ellipses over here to determine that information as well. The change between kind of how this information is displayed, you can use this time granularity dropdown to determine if you want to view it at a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or yearly level. And then also we have some additional columns you can add within this table over here on the left, such as your predecessors, task alias type, percentage complete, just making it a little bit more apparent that those options are available. So when you're working with any of these particular tasks that you have assigned, you can always select on the ellipses to get a little bit more information. If you want to work with it in a more of a modal window, you can go ahead and do so. And you can change the duration, the amount of work, the start and end date, as well as if it's a fixed unit, fixed duration, or fixed work. Also, you can determine your predecessors as well as the resources that you would wish to assign to those particular tasks within here as well. And the new notes area will be found within here as well. So you will see this notes option, which will give you a modal window where you can provide notes. And so let's say we want to add a note on this particular task, and this task has been delayed by 2 days. We can go ahead and provide that in here. You'll then get your name showing who you are, as well as the timestamp and that particular note that has been provided. So this can be updated on an ongoing basis, as well as other users that have access to this particular schedule will be able to view this information as well. So if I go ahead and create that note, and let's say I save and check in my project, now any task that has notes associated to it will have a visual icon being displayed where you can click on that and see the notes that have been provided. Perfect, so I'm gonna go back to the home page and open up my slide deck once more. And the next area that we'll be covering will be on the Bulk Project Allocation Flatgrid side of things. So we did make a couple updates here and there, a lot of quality of life improvements to make the usability of these screens even better. And the first one I wanted to bring up is just the ability to filter the tasks in a more uniform fashion. So we've heard a lot of user feedback based off of trying to hide generic or non-generic tasks within the view. So we have built that into the options where you can users can determine which type of tasks they want to display. So when you select on this option grid within BPA Flatgrid, you will have a new option called Tasks to Show, where you can determine if you want your generic, your non-generic, or all your tasks to be displayed. So this will be displayed and persisted within the view. So if you go ahead and select on I only want to see non-generic tasks, then the next time you navigate into the BPA Flatgrid view, you should also continue to see only non-generic tasks. This can be updated at any point in time, as well as is associated to the user that is applying that value. Next is another piece of feedback that we heard quite a bit, and it's centered around the amount of attributes that can be added into the Bulk Project Allocation Flatgrid. So in a couple versions or a few versions back, when we introduced the capability to add some of these columns, we didn't really put a restriction on how many attributes could be added. However, after that point in time, we then restricted it to be 5. We heard feedback saying that we needed to have additional attributes like they had before, so we have reverted that change back. So now you will have the capability to add as many project resource or assignment attributes within the Bulk Project Allocation Flatgrid view, as well as we introduced some freezing logic for the first 5 rows within here. So that will include the project resource as well as task rows or columns. However, the first 5 columns will be frozen within this view, and then the additional ones will be acting as part of the grid. Additionally, like we saw in the single project allocation grid as well, we did also introduce the ability to rearrange the columns that are being displayed based off your project resource and assignment attributes. So any of those custom attributes that you add within the grid will be able to be rearranged within BPA Flatgrid. So similarly to SPA as well, you won't be able to rearrange any of the custom date columns that are, or the date columns that are added in there. So the time frame will have to be concurrent and will not be able to be moved around. In addition to that, the resource, project, task, as well as workflow will also not be able to be rearranged as well. So those will be in a static position, but your custom attributes will be able to be rearranged by clicking on the column header and dragging it into the appropriate position. A small update here, but we did make a brief update to how precision numbers have been sorted within the BPA Flatgrid. Previously, they're being sorted alphabetically, which could lead to some confusion when you have decimal places or you have varying numbers where 100 would just be displayed prior to 90. So that has been changed, so it's now being sorted numerically instead of alphabetically. And then lastly, we did make some updates to BPA Flatgrid just to be overall more performant, especially on the filtering side of things. So I'm gonna head back to Tempus once more. And we'll just go through some of those changes on the Bulk Project Allocation Flatgrid side of things. So if I navigate to my BPA Flatgrid tile right here, and I'll just start this view off fresh and clear everything. And I'll just provide a start and end date. So if I go in here, I'll go to my resource mode, and I'll just go ahead and select a couple resources. So the first option we do have is within this options, where you can determine the tasks to show. And so you can see over here my tasks. I have identity go partners, I have my generic tasks, some more customly defined tasks. So right now, both my custom tasks as well as my generic tasks are being displayed. However, when I work with these options and say I want to only see my generic tasks, it'll filter that list automatically, just show only generic. Or if I want to focus on my non-generic tasks, I can go ahead and do the same thing. And now all those generic tasks have been hidden and only my custom defined tasks are being displayed. Additionally, if we go over here to choose attributes, I can go and add my attributes in, and I'll add a couple assignment attributes. And if I scroll down a little bit, I'll add some of my resource attributes. And then previously we're at that 5 limit where we would not be able to add any more. However, if I scroll down and I wanted to add some more additional past that 5, I'll have the capability to do so. Okay. Outside of that, you will notice if I use the scroll, we do have my first 5 tasks over here, or first 5 columns, apologies, that are being frozen on the left-hand side, as well as if I want to change the ordering of any of these, just like in single project allocation, if I select the column header and put it into that new position, you can go ahead and do so and change how those will be displayed. So the positioning of these columns will persist within the view as well. So if you have a view that you're working with, you set it up perfectly where the columns need to be displayed. The next time that you navigate there, you should see the same kind of feel of that, and you won't have to change the positioning each time you navigate into Bulk Project Allocation Flatgrid. Okay, so I'm gonna head back home. And then the next area that we'll be covering is the roadmap side of things. So the roadmap is something that has been relatively new, and it's a newer piece of functionality, and we've been getting a lot of great feedback from our clients on some of the enhancements. And so we have been focusing and making some of those adjustments within here. And the first thing that I want to go through is the ability to add roadmap level milestones within your roadmap view. So a roadmap level milestone will be something that is displayed at the milestone level and will be associated to each of your milestones. So within the editing screen, you will have a capability to add those roadmap level milestones, which will allow you to provide a name as well as a date, as well as lastly, select the color that you want associated to there. Once those are defined, you will have a visual indicator showing that information within the milestone as a vertical line. So this will be important. So for important events within the organization or particular deadlines at an overall level, this will help you visualize and plan around those particular milestones that may be part of your portfolio. Additionally, we've added a flag to include or exclude your demand planning resources from the roadmap. This will be very useful, especially on the overallocation threshold that you may have set up. If you do not wish to include that within there, and you're more so focused around the named individuals within your organization, you can choose to exclude your demand planning resources so that they're not coming up in those calculations. Additionally, like we saw earlier, we introduced the ability to add project dependencies within your projects. Those project dependencies will then also flow in to the roadmaps that you set up. So based off of what you've set up on the project dependency side, there will be visual indicators showing you what those dependencies are and what projects are associated to which to other projects within Tempus. And then lastly, we've also added the ability to export your roadmap to Excel. Okay, so I'm going to head back to Tempus once more, and we'll navigate to my roadmap management tile. And I have a bunch of different roadmaps already created, but I'm going to focus on this 2022 plan by phase. And once we navigate here, the first thing you'll notice is a couple of the roadmap milestones. So by default, we always will provide that today line, just showing you where you currently are. However, any of the roadmap milestones that you've added within here will also be displayed. To manage some of what those look like and if you need to add any additional roadmap milestones within here, we can go ahead and just edit the roadmap within here. And there'll be a new area on the right-hand side called milestones. Within here, you can update the particular dates of your existing milestones, as well as update the color scheme that you're looking to work with. So I'll change this to pink. I'll change this one to green. And then additionally, you can add any new milestones within here. So say go live within here. We can provide that particular date. And I'll just say this is going to end at on the end of November. And then we can determine that color. I'll make that light blue. Now, if we go ahead and update this and go back and navigate to my milestone, my roadmap, you'll now have that new milestone roadmap displayed over here on the right-hand side. Additionally, you'll see those project dependencies that I was talking about earlier. So now, based off of what I've previously set up, Zulu Phase 2 is dependent on my new project. So we're seeing that association within here, as well as my Y Project 6 and Y Project 5 are also dependent on Zulu Phase 10. So any of those dependencies that you do set up on that project side will also be reflected within the roadmaps that you do create. Next, if we go back to my edit option right here and change the configuration of the roadmap, you will see that include demand planning resources option. So when it is enabled like it is right now, my demand planning resources will be provided in those over allocation calculations. And so if I had this enabled, I would anticipate to see my demand planning resources show up if they're over allocated during that particular time frame. If I choose to exclude them, we'll essentially remove those resources and exclude them from those calculations. So you'd be more so fixated on the allocation that is assigned to your named individuals, not your demand planning resources. Okay, and then the last option that is available within here, and I'll navigate, just make that update and navigate back one more screen, is we do now have an export to Excel option. So if we click on here, we'll export that roadmap into an Excel format, and we'll just go ahead and open this up so we can see what that looks like. And so within here, it's going to be drawing out those particular Gantt charts within here, showing you kind of the percent complete of each one and what those will look like, as well as we have an indicator of what particular aggregate they belong to, in this case my face, as well as if they're a partial project or not, and then the name will be displayed within the bar that has been drawn. Okay, so I'm gonna head back to my slide deck once more, and the last couple areas we'll be talking about is some updates on the resource planning side, as well as some additional updates just throughout the product itself. So to start things out on the resource planning side, we did make an adjustment within the resource request workflow to allow for the requested by resource to be displayed within the grid once more. Additionally, we did have some performance updates when it came to the net availability grid and some of the other grids, which are primarily utilized within the build team screen, the resource request screen, as well as the resource replace screen. So there should be a much greater performance on those particular screens, especially when you're working with a large subset of your resources. Okay, and additionally, on those same screens for the build team screen, resource replace, and resource request screens, we have also optimized the loading performance when it comes to retrieving some of the skills information. So in all three of those particular views, users do have the capability to add in their skills information based off the skills matrix. So you can bring that information in, and we've just improved upon the performance of bringing that information into those views. Additionally, we've also had some updates to help the performance on the skills matrix report side of things as well. Okay, so we also have timesheets within here as well, and there's some minor updates to some of our existing functionality. So the first one is just we've added the ability to show particular project attributes within timesheets. So something we introduced, I believe in 6.3, was the ability to show your project attributes within the screens. However, some of the feedback we received is we need this to be a little bit more restrictive on based on what those resources should be seeing within those views. So within the timesheet side of things, we've added the ability to determine what attributes are actually going to be displayed. So instead of having a list of all the attributes associated to your projects, administrators can pick and choose within the timesheet configuration tile what attributes they'd like their resources to see. Additionally, we've associated the resource request area into the timesheeting side as well. So now if you choose to enable it, you can also display the statuses of your particular resource requests within your users' timesheets. So if there will be a new option on the timesheet configuration side of things called Show Resource Request Status, and when enabled and when you're utilizing the resource request workflow, those statuses of those particular assignments will also be displayed on the timesheet side of things. Associated with that as well, we've given the ability for users to also filter based off of any of those resource request statuses. So now if this option is enabled and a user goes to the options, they can choose to filter their resource requests based off the available statuses that we have in Tempus. It's important to note for the end users that may be utilizing this functionality that these filters do persist ongoing. So if you provide a pending, you select the pending filter, the next time a user navigates back to their timesheet, that pending filter will still be applied. So just may be good to just be aware of that in case for some reason they're not seeing some of their timesheet rows within here due to the filtering that exists within the view. Next, we have some updates on the reporting side of things, and these are relatively minor. First is just an update to the pivot grid and pivot chart to account for that forecast amount, that new data set that we've added on the project financial side of things. Additionally, we've also updated how some of the values are being displayed on the Excel side of things. So previously, when exported, a lot of these different fields based off of if there were a date or a number or whatever they were being displayed in as Tempus would all export over as general. And we saw some, or we received some feedback that they like to actually be representative of the type that they are within Tempus. So we did just that. So now when you export this information, if it's a number field, it should be associated that way within the Excel file, same with the date side of things. And then lastly, we've also removed some of the automatic formatting that we apply to some of the exports on the pivot grid side of things. So if you did the export to Excel or export to CSV option, there would be some cell merging depending on how many columns and rows you've added within the grid. And we've just gone ahead and removed that from those exports. So then lastly, we have kind of everywhere. So these would just be pieces of functionality that didn't quite fit into some of the more generalized areas that we've covered earlier, but still very important options. And the first one is just on the resource management side of things. We did add the ability to add the capacity start and capacity end date within the resource management view. These will also be available in single project allocation and bulk project allocation. However, in all of these views, including the resource management, these will be only displayed as read-only. So you will not be able to make updates and edit this information with any of those views. You'll only have them for view-only purposes, but you can add those within BPA, SPA, as well as resource management. Additionally, we've added a new general setting to provide an alias for the tasks within your system. So maybe this is discipline or release or any sort of kind of naming convention you're looking for at the task level. You can choose now to rename that throughout the entirety of the product. Another small update, but very useful one on your attribution side of things. For your project resource and assignment URL attributes, we've now provided an icon next to those so they can easily navigate to the URL, whereas previously there was instances where there was some difficulty actually navigating to the URL within there. So you'll see this icon over here, and clicking on it will navigate you to the URL that you provide within the field. We've also made a small update to how attributes are being displayed when they're in a read-only state. So previously, especially on the date side of things, they were a lighter shade of gray, which made it difficult to be read when viewing that information. So we've standardized that and normalized that throughout the product, so it's a more visible way to see this information within Tempus. We've also updated the way that multi-selection attributes are being sorted. Previously, they were being sorted based off the ID, so the point in time that they were added in there. Now they should be sorted alphanumerically. And then we have a couple API updates as well within this current version. The first one will be the concept of a timesheet API super user. So in the past, when working with the API and timesheet calls, you were only capable of making timesheet calls against the resources that you essentially were the manager for or yourself. This restricted some of the capabilities when trying to make some of those updates, like submitting timesheets on users' behalfs and updating timesheet on their behalf, as well as some capability on the subscription and webhook side of things. So we've introduced the concept of a timesheet super user. This will be managed within global roles for the manage all timesheets option. So if you are a user within the system that has the capability to utilize the API, as well as has the manage all timesheet option enabled, you then should be able to interact with any user's timesheet via the API. So you'll be able to make updates to them if needed, or additionally, you'll be able to use webhooks and subscriptions based off of the events that are happening within those accounts. So this is managed by a separate permission. If you do not have this enabled, it's going to more so follow the previous logic where you can only interact with your timesheet as well as some of the timesheets that you manage. Additionally, since we've added the resource request statusing options within the timesheeting side of things, we've also added a Boolean property called show resource request status within here to determine if you want to pull over that information if it has been enabled on the timesheet side. We also added one more thing on the timesheeting sides when there is a API called get all timesheets, and previously this was not pulling the timesheet task notes associated to the timesheets, and we've made an update so now that information will be able to be pulled and be able to be displayed when pulling any of this information. And then lastly, we've also given users that have the ability to edit their own skills, they can now execute API calls against their own skill values. So this will still you will still need to account for some of the permissions that are assigned to them, and the user would still need to have access to utilize an API token. However, if it's a very limited account, they have the ability to use an API token and they want to edit their own, and they have the ability to edit their own skills, they'll now be able to do so without having some of the higher permissions within the system. Okay, so that covers the new functionality within version 7.0. Thank you everyone for joining today, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it back over to Samantha to conclude today's session.
Thank you so much, Matt, for covering all of that. That was really helpful. There are quite a few questions that came in. Matt and I will be answering those separately, privately. Some of them were more generic about functionality, which is perfectly fine. So we will be reaching out to the individuals who asked those questions. Just an idea of timing. So we expect premium support customers to be able to upgrade Dev starting Monday, May 9th. That means these premium support customers will get an email from me letting them know we can start to get that scheduled. And then we are expecting production environments to be available for upgrade, probably starting May 16th, potentially a little bit sooner. Again, all customers, everyone will get an email from me. Your Tempus admin will get an email from me letting them know that it's time to, or they can schedule the upgrade. So thank you, Matt, so much. A recording of this will be sent to you all today, and it will be available in the Help Center, which is also where we keep the release notes. So thank you, everyone. So happy you could join us, and I hope you have a great week. Bye-bye.